Blog Talk Radio.
Warning, the following program may include profane language, controversial viewpoints, and perspectives on the true nature of reality so far removed from the status quo, they'll make your head spin like a top. Young children, corporate executives, and religious fundamentalists should turn away now.
Good evening, planet Earth, and welcome to Extraordinary Year, the online show about 2012 for everyday people like you. My name is Tim Bravo, and I thank you for joining us tonight. T-minus 197 days until December 21st, 2012. That's right, we're now under the 200-day mark. Remember, if you like the show tonight, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/extraordinaryyear. We've got a quickly growing community of conscientious people there communicating and sharing events, news, ideas, stuff you might not learn about otherwise. Our guest tonight is Alfred Webre, one of the more distinguished faces in the disclosure community and a soldier of truth for many years now. He holds a Juris Doctor in International Law from Yale Law School, was an administrator for the New York City Environmental Protection Administration, and is probably best known for his work in exopolitics, which may be understood as interplanetary or even intergalactic, even interdimensional relations. A prolific communicator, Alfred has hosted his own radio show. He's released a number of important interviews on YouTube and was in fact instrumental in bringing last week's guest, Tolek, to the world's attention. His latest project is ExoUniversity.org, a website dedicated to educating open-minded seekers about a much wider reality than is to be found from any mainstream source of information. Topics include the extraterrestrial evidence in archaeology, the science of remote viewing, and the truth about the secret space program, jump rooms to Mars and the moon, and even, honest-to-God, time travel. I'm personally honored to have an opportunity to speak with him, and so, Alfred, thank you so much for talking with us tonight.
Tim, you know, I'm very, very happy, and I must say that you've given one of the most succinct definitions of exopolitics that I've heard. You know, interdimensional extraterrestrial relations. It's basically the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. So that is interdimensional. So that's absolutely right.
And unfortunately, you know, the majority of the people on the planet probably don't look at our reality as being more than three-dimensional, let alone extra-dimensional. And so, you know, we got kind of a tough egg to crack in changing the worldview of the folks around us. And so I kind of want to get to it. You're kind of doing that with ExoUniversity.org.
Yeah, you know, Tim, your phone's breaking up. Could I call you on Skype? Would that make a difference?
I wish I could say that it was. I believe myself that it's a Skype issue. It's shown up. It's shown up in the show before because I actually Skype into the show so that I don't have to use a cell phone.
Okay.
Sorry, this is the best I've got with Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, good enough then.
Thanks for asking. Thanks for caring.
Yeah, sure.
So, ExoUniversity.org, what will people find there?
Yeah, well, you know, first of all, just to give people some background about what ExoUniversity is, because we spent some time coming to that concept. And I had been approached by universities in this realm, and there was one college in the university system here in British Columbia where I live that actually approached me and said, well, can you come up with a curriculum for exopolitics? And I did, and I met with the directors of the head of the department there and senior faculty level, and they said, my God, this is 10 years ahead of its time. We can't possibly do it. And so I realized after doing that exercise, and also I was concurrently approached by one of the leading universities in the UK, Oxford University Press, which is a division of Oxford University, to write a book on extraterrestrials and the law. And I learned a great deal during that exercise about paradigms and how the current university, let's say the current knowledge paradigm, which is enforced in the curricula of universities, of colleges, of high schools, and of grammar schools even, systematically and intentionally excludes the most important knowledge of our era. And that knowledge is, you can say, is in three areas. Number one, it's in exosciences and sci-sciences and exopolitics. So exosciences are the new sciences of quantum access and sort of the multi-dimensional nature of reality and of the multiverse in which we live and of the time-space hologram in which we live. So the typical disciplines under exosciences are things like time travel and teleportation, which the black budget end of the U.S. government has had for 40 years. The second area are the sci-sciences, which are based on consciousness and psi, which is the non-local property of consciousness. It includes telepathy, psychokinesis, precognition. It also, all of the science of parapsychology. It also includes the survival of consciousness after bodily death. That is life after life, the interlife, that is life between lives, the scientific study of reincarnation, where deeper human souls go to the interlife and sort of process what they've done and then choose to assume bodily form someplace in the multiverse. It may or may not be on this particular Earth, and it may not be in human form. We're beginning to learn from the scientific basis. But these are all subjects that have been in spiritual and religious texts for time immemorial and have been belief-based. And some of these texts are accurate and some are not. And so this is an area which the university curricula have, and the secondary schools and primary schools have, excluded. They, even in the schools that are, let's say, religiously based, what one follows is a religious dogma as to the nature of soul and the nature of the afterlife and the nature of source or God, which is faith-based or belief-based, that is not scientifically based. And now the science has advanced to a point through experimental design, for example, through hypnotic regression of soul memories of the interlife, where we have replicable studies in more than 7,000 samples of, for example, the nature of source. What is God like from a scientific basis? What is the interlife soul experience like? What occurs immediately after bodily death? And we're beginning to get an exact picture of this from replicable case studies. And finally, the third area, exopolitics, which is the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. We live in a highly populated multiverse, and our planet is being visited on a multidimensional level now, and extraterrestrial and interdimensional civilizations are very, very present, and yet our population, our world population, because of arbitrary rules set in place by the alphabet agencies, principally by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, following the 1953 Robertson panel, it functionally has prohibited the mention of any extraterrestrial life in either governmental, in science, in public discourse, in journalism and news, in any areas. It's been prohibited and taboo to mention that, and any mention of UFOs or of extraterrestrials is accompanied by ridicule. And, people who work in these areas have had their careers ruined. They've been persecuted by the state. They've been assassinated. They've been economically ruined. And all to serve the interests of a very narrow class, and that is the class of plutocrats whom the intelligence agencies serve as essentially muscle. We live on a planet that is still following, after 280,000 years, the essential template that was put down by the landing of the Anunnaki ETs 280,000 years ago, in which they targeted this planet as a gold exploitation planet and began to devolve Homo sapiens from a 12-strand DNA species down to a 2-strand DNA slave species. And all of the institutions of governance, from the monarchies to institutions like the Pope, who really is a transformation of the Roman Emperor that happened in 325 AD, and governments. In fact, government itself is just carrying forward the exploitative Anunnaki hierarchy that was imposed here 280,000 years ago. And it's come down to that the governmental form really exists to exploit people, to carry out wars, and to periodically depopulate the population on behalf of the ruling elite, who represent, on behalf of the Illuminati, the inheritors of the Anunnaki Illuminati exploitative hierarchy. So, in a certain way, we're still living with a public order that was set in place 280,000 years ago. And these are the subject matters that exopolitics tackles. And so the knowledge system, people say, oh, well, I can get myself $250,000 in debt and get a college. Right now, it costs $52,000 a year to go to Harvard. And so people say, well, I can, get myself $250,000 in debt and get a college degree or a master's or a PhD, but most of the knowledge there is just matrix knowledge. It's just to get a job inside the matrix. It's not genuine. It's not based on true knowledge in exosciences, sciences, and exopolitics, which are essentially the sciences of the true state of reality at this point. So that's why we founded ExoUniversity, to break through the matrix and deconstruct that knowledge and form an educational entity based on exosciences, sciences, and exopolitiks. And it's on the internet, so it's accessible to all ages. Now you have kids 10 years old who, can access the internet and can absorb a tremendous amount of information because they're crystal kids. They have come in with many strands of the DNA activated, up to 6 strands or more, and with very activated chakra systems and auras. They're essentially more advanced creatures who are regaining and part of the reactivated Homo sapiens after the intervention to devolve us down to 2-strand DNA. So that's kind of the historical context. As a practical matter, people can just go to exouniversity.org, and we're now beginning to add classes. For 2012, we have a forum system, and each of the forums, there are 8 forums in 2012, and there are about a total of 3 or 4 classes for each forum. And what we're doing, people say, well, what about certification? Will you be certified by the state? And the answer is this: this is new knowledge. We are creating knowledge and we're empowering people for the future with real knowledge for the real future world, not the matrix future world. So, for example, it's possible to earn a certificate at ExoUniversity. One simply has to take all of the classes, which will be about 23 or 24 or 25 plus or minus classes in all the forums, and also then complete some of the course requirements, which may include a paper. But this certificate may have employment value. You can put it on your resume. It would be a very handsome certificate. Practitioners can put it on their wall. Who's to say that you would not have the advantage in interviews with companies? You know, right now, the only way that you can access knowledge in exosciences is to either join an intelligence agency or a defense contractor, and people find that morally repugnant because they're serving the national security state whose objective is permanent war. So that's kind of a summary of ExoUniversity.
Let me go back on some of the stuff that we've discussed in the last few minutes, because you brought up a couple questions. The first question I have is one of our friends in the chat room asked about when we were talking about the Anunnaki. You want to know, is this also the same group that has been referred to as the custodians? Do you know?
You broke up, so I missed that last word.
The custodians?
Custodians.
Have you heard to the Anunnaki as referred to as the custodian?
Okay. I have not heard of the term custodians referred to the Anunnaki. More or less the history of the Anunnaki is as follows. If you look at the development of Homo sapiens from Homo erectus, the development of Homo sapiens was really a special project. We're kind of a special project that was undertaken by a consortium of advanced ethical human civilizations in this region of the galaxy, civilizations like the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, and others. And the goal there was to create a 12-strand DNA light being in the third dimension, which is, a very advanced concept. We're really created in our blueprint to be a very high expression of 12-strand DNA, i.e. multi-dimensional beings capable of reaching into multiple dimensions from 3D, which are in the time-space hologram, and as light beings, that is, beings who are really centered on divine light. They're in the upper dimensions when one gets to 6th, 7th, and 8th. Light, if we think of time and space here in our dimensions as sort of the dimensions which define it, when one gets to upper dimensions like light and love, cosmic love, begin to define those dimensions. It's hard for us to conceptualize that from here.
Right.
And what occurred is that the Anunnaki ETs belong to an unascended planet in an ascended star system and that planet was captured in the orbit of our sun, and every 3,600 years comes into our orbit. It has a very wide orbit and is sort of orbiting in space. And so that planet then, as it came into our solar system, began to use Earth as a jumping-off point, starting about 280,000 years ago. So at that point, they intersected with Earth and essentially were interlopers into the Homo sapiens experiment that was undertaken here on this planet Earth, and interfered with the designed evolutionary path designed for Homo sapiens as a 12-strand DNA being by taking an exploitative predatory position toward the planet to use it, number one, to use the planet as a source of gold for their own planet. They would use gold to help shield it from the cosmic forces and teleport the gold off of our planet to their waiting spaceships or directly to their planet. Secondly, they interfered with Homo sapiens and deliberately dumbed us down or deactivated us down to 2-strand DNA or down to slave status, taking away much of our multidimensionality and establishing themselves as planetary rulers, and then establishing a local ruler class. The Egyptian pharaohs, for example, were an example of the survivors of the Anunnaki ruling class, the Anunnaki occupation. And if you go to icons or pictures of the Egyptian pharaohs, you'll find that they all use these kind of conical headdresses because they were cone heads. They had the elongated skulls and other attributes from the Anunnaki ETs, and it's from that source that we have the exploitative Anunnaki Illuminati hierarchy that lives on, for example, in the monarchical traditions. For example, we just had the 60th anniversary jubilee of the Queen of England, the British monarch, the UK monarch. That could be considered the planetary ruler, or kind of the planetary monarch, although that monarch is subservient to the Pope, who is the successor to the Roman Emperor. And the British monarch is subservient to the Pope by the secret Treaty of Verona of the 1700s. We live on a fairly archaic planet, and yet, we're a planet that's filled with starseeds, and that's populated by Homo sapiens that has the potential of being multidimensional beings, and the new generations and the babies are coming in. It's estimated that 80 or 90%, 9 out of 10 of the babies that are being born are actually what they call crystal children or star children, and that is that they have had their DNA activated, and they're up to 4-strand DNA, 6-strand, etc.
It's almost as if they're here in preparation for something.
Well, it's here as part of a process of reclaiming the third dimension from the Anunnaki occupation, i.e., Homo sapiens was created as the dominant species on this planet. We were created as a 12-strand DNA light beings on this planet, and we're an extremely valuable universe resources. And we had an exploitative predatory species come in 280,000 years ago, the Anunnaki, and dumb us down to 2 strands, introduce religion, introduce government and hierarchy of certain ways that now have survived down through the monarchs and all of these secret bloodlines that are ruling us from the Anunnaki. But they are parasitical and predators on the planet. And now, what's occurring now at this time is that Homo sapiens we are awakening. Our DNA is being activated so that we can begin to take sovereignty back on this planet and take it back from the Anunnaki Illuminati exploitative hierarchy, which, as we do that, will deconstruct. I mean, the fact that you have the UK monarch owns 26% of the land surface of the planet, and meanwhile, millions of children are literally starving to death. And so one can expect nothing from them because they see themselves as a separate species. They're a parasite on humanity.
You seem quite passionate about that, Alfred.
Well, I'm passionate because trying to wake people up. Now, maybe one should not be passionate, just speak calmly, but these are truths which I think should be ruling people rather than, all of sort of the matrix programming that people are caught up into now. All of the matrix, their mortgages, pursuing fads, wars. Why not wake up to what's going on the planet and reclaim it before it's destroyed and we are destroyed? To me, sometimes I don't understand why the planet, and why so much of humanity remains asleep. Now, there are reasons for that. The Illuminati have invested quite a bit in exotic technology, exotic mind control technology like HAARP, which, at night, or during the day, beams into the limbic systems of humans all sorts of programming to keep them docile or angry or apathetic. I've spoken to and heard former programmers for the Department of Defense who used to write the programming for HAARP and other forms of electromagnetic mind control that are now used to just mind control all of the people. Here you have the United States of America, for example. It's $15 trillion in debt. It's totally non-sustainable. $7 trillion of that was caused by the invasions of Afghanistan in 2001 and Iraq in 2003. The invasion of Afghanistan was a result of a false flag operation to give the pretext to invade Afghanistan to take Afghanistan back from the Taliban, because the Taliban had prohibited the production of opium, which is the base for heroin and dope Inc., the worldwide drug trade, which is controlled by the British throne and the leading bloodline families from the city of London, going back to the reign of George III, used Afghanistan as a principal source for the heroin that is unloaded in the U.S. and in the UK. So all that they had to do was to manipulate the totally malleable American public and the world public into a false flag operation in 9/11, right. Throw them into Afghanistan where they thought that they were fighting for freedom. A lot of baloney, right. All that they're doing is fighting on behalf of Dope Inc. so that the opium production can go back. And similarly in Iraq, 1.5 million innocent Iraqi women and children, civilians, were killed in an invasion that the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal, on which I serve as a judge, has found to be a crime against peace, which is a Nuremberg-level war crime intentionally undertaken by deceit by George W. Bush, a representative of the oil companies. I mean, Bush's father, George W. Bush, worked for Rockefeller, and that's SO standard and all of the oil companies. So they killed 1.5 million people. They destroyed the treasury of the United States on behalf of the drug companies, on behalf of the oil companies, and Dope Inc. The heroin traffic, which is the largest industry on the face of the planet. So that's what's going on, and people are asleep at the switch, and they just follow the Matrix movie of what's fed to them, which is totally false. Mm-hmm. The war in Afghanistan was about heroin and poppies and opium, and continues to be, and also about uranium and about oil pipelines. And the war in Iraq was about oil and about genocide, about dropping depleted uranium weapons to make radioactive that entire area and to destroy the DNA of the people of that area, to where you have monster babies being born in Fallujah now with 2 heads and horrible birth defects, so as to depopulate that area. So that's what's really going on. And so if I speak passionately, it's because I'm aware of these facts, because I'm an international war crimes judge, and I'm also one of the fundamental researchers in exopolitics. And so now I put it, with a group of other people, we're now putting it into university format so that people can begin to learn about these things in an organized way and get degrees. Now, Harvard costs you $52,000 a year in tuition. At ExoUniversity, each class costs $4.95.
Hey, I can pay that.
Yeah, to download, and that's the cost of a latte at Starbucks. So you can make up your mind. Do you want to have a latte at Starbucks, or do you want to watch a class? And the feedback from classes that we've gotten from people, they say, my whole perspective has changed, because people, for once, they're being exposed to the truth and not to matrix programming, which is what you get at, Sociology 101 or Government 101 or Physics 101 at, Harvard or Yale or Oklahoma State or whatever.
Right. Well, and I'd say I'm sorry to have set you off, but I'm not. I tend to get passionate myself on this show. This is how I normally talk. This is my normal way of talking in public, and so it's not that you set me off. It's that this is what I see. I'm reflecting a part, just a part of reality that has been suppressed for too long, and that now is finding an outlet. So let's get back to I want to kind of go over some of your bona fides, because there are maybe listeners out there who are not quite familiar with the reasons that what you know.
Okay.
So before I get on to the biggest secrets that you know, in other words, the secret space program, the jump rooms, bases on Mars and the Moon, other secret technology, etc., stuff like that, I want to talk about the time-traveling researchers who came back to check up on you back in the 70s, who came back in the 2000-somethings, traveled back in time to research you.
Yeah.
So can you tell listeners how that happened and what it was?
Yeah, that was thank you very much, Tim, for asking about that, because that was one of the most anomalous experiences. it turns out, and I learned shortly after the publication of my book, Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe. That's a book that essentially founded the field of exopolitics. It came out in the year 2000 on the Internet, and then in 2005 it was published. And there are about 20 scholars and researchers who have written introductions to that book. They range from Uri Geller to the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada to one of the most holy rabbis of Israel. So everybody, the whole spectrum is covered there. And of people who say, hey, what this man is saying is correct. You must listen to this. And so it's not just, one particular voice of opinion. We have opinions across the board. And so when that book first came out, I learned from my editor that there were multiple witnesses to my book having been time traveled using advanced quantum access technology, Tesla-based quantum access technology, that took the book from at least 2005, sometime from 2005 forward, took a copy of the book and brought it back to at least 1971. And there were multiple witnesses who saw the book and experienced it in 1971. And I didn't write the book till it wasn't published till 2005, and I didn't write the first draft of the book until 1999. So it was time traveled back there. It's what we call a time travel artifact. And basically, very briefly, the story of the witnessing, which you can ask Andrew DiBisciago when you have him on as a guest to verify it, was that he was with his father and another witness, and his father brought out a satchel, one of these satchels like where classified materials are held, and that's where they hold classified time travel materials. That is, time travel materials that are brought by the CIA or DARPA from the future back to the past. They send a probe, a time travel probe, either a person or some other kind of probe, and they get something in the future and they bring it back to the past. Well, he brought my book back to the past, and there it was, and he witnessed it personally along with his father and one other person. His father worked with a CIA contractor and was sort of his control in this program, and so CIA and DARPA had my book in 1971. Now, concurrently, in 1971, switch the videotape over to me. Remember that we're in a time-space hologram, all of us. And in a time-space hologram, you can go from any point in that time-space hologram to any other point. From A, B, C, D, point A, B, C, D to point E, F, Y, G. And what time travel technology is a technology that will allow you to quantum displace yourself in the time-space hologram. It's kind of like Tron. Have you seen that?
Yes. I've seen both
Tron?
of them.
Yeah. So that you develop time travel technology gives you the ability to, where you navigate through the time-space hologram. You say, okay, let's go to 2050 AD or 2045 AD, and let's go to, this and such, and you land there, and you open up, and you're there. Or let's go back to, 1865 or 1863, the Lincoln address, and whoop, and you're there. And Andrew can explain to you, since we're at the beginning of the time-space era, that there are about 7 or 8 different technologies that were available at that time. So we're back in 1971, and here we have DARPA, which developed time travel, which developed the Tesla-based quantum access time travel. And the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, and Department of Defense. And concurrently, I was then the general counsel and assistant administrator of the Environmental Protection Administration of New York City. And my job, I had a whole staff of public interest lawyers. At the time, it was the beginning of the environmental movement, the National Environmental Policy Act. Everybody was, gung-ho to really save the environment. And I was quite, I had shoulder-length hair, I had a walrus mustache, and I was in the New York newspapers every week. I was in the New York Post, and I used to go out and give talks, right? So one day I get an invitation to speak at an organization that I thought was an environmental organization called the Delaware Valley Industrial Engineers Association or something like that. And I said, sure, I'll go. And this man came and picked me up in a car, and he looked different. He was in a suit, and not only a man in a suit, but he looked kind of like government agency, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you.
And,
like a spook.
They were a very different type of a person from the environmentalists that used to ask me out to speak to them. I mean, you go to an environmental movement meeting and you know what you're going to find. You're going to find housewives, you're going to find students, you're going to find, senior citizens that are really concerned about water quality, air quality, this issue, that issue, nuclear power, and they're kind of part of a community. And this wasn't that. It was a very different vibe. But I said, what the heck, I'll go. So I got in, and we drove for 3 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, way south, all the way down to Delaware, I think, and or even past there. And we came to a nondescript office building, and we went in, and I still remember it really freshly. There were about 50 or so men. They were all men, all in suits and ties or just white shirts and ties, but they were all like suits, right? They looked like CIA, Department of Defense operatives, if you know what I'm saying. And I instantly knew that I was not in front of an environmental activist audience, that there was something going on. It's what we call cognitive dissonance. So I just played it straight. I said, and I gave my standard environmental stump speech. And, and throughout it, I can remember that members of the audience were like smirking at me, and I just, toughed it out. And we left, and they gave me applause. It's very loud applause at the end. And they gave me a mug which said Delaware Valley Industrial Engineers Association. And I kept that mug in my office as general counsel, there. So I remember it very well. Well, what that was, we put all the pieces together, was that was a time travel surveillance meeting, whereby they had a copy of my book, my future book. They may and probably were surveying me in the future via time travel. Maybe they were surveying this particular radio program.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about full circle.
And then they were, as CIA analysts and operatives and DOD and DARPA people, they were trying to see, okay, this guy's going to be out there in the future in 2012, 2013. He's going to be part of the whistleblower. There'll be, ExoUniversity, he and Andy Bashago, Laura Eisenhower, William D. Stillings. He'll be the chairman of the Mars Anomaly Research Society. He'll be the founder and director of ExoUniversity. He's going to be the founder of Exopolitics. We want to see what he's like now. Now, I had no conscious idea of what was going on, but I felt like the principal actor in a movie called Enemy of the State. I'm not sure if you saw that particular movie, but that's a movie in which a Washington lawyer, which I am, I'm a lawyer, I'm a member of the Washington, D.C. bar. Suddenly, somebody drops a national security secret in his wife's shopping bag, and he has the entire NSA looking into his life. And from that moment forward, in 1971, through the present, as we speak, I've been an intense focus of what I call the time travel police and the national security state. Because, you know, they have been focusing on Andy Basiago, on me, on Laura Eisenhower since 1971. You know, how are we going to fulfill our destinies? Because they, you know, so that I'm trying to convey, since you asked me to the audience of what quantum entanglement means. In other words, time travel entanglement. Those, my colleagues, Andrew Basiago, Laura Eisenhower, and myself, and others, have been quantum entangled since 1971. We were surveyed on time travel about what we're going to be doing in this era, and we've been followed, and we're playing key roles in bringing all of this to light as part of the truth movement, and with solutions, because our job is to provide solutions to get us out of this conundrum, this planetary conundrum that we're in now. So that to me, it's been both a gift to be able to lead this type of life where you're sort of, you know, a participant observer, and also sort of, you know, a guinea pig as the big brother national security states watches your every move via time travel, and then also via squads of agents on the ground in every country in the world that I've ever visited in my life up until today.
So you've seen them out there, out and about on the world stage?
Oh, completely. One time, I had, and I see that we're just about 8 minutes prior to the end of the program, so I don't want to get into the more complex, you know, I don't want to get into the more complex kind of inner workings of what I call time travel politics or exopolitics, but this is like, you know, trying to surface this enormous truth to a world that doesn't comprehend multidimensionality and quantum access yet, and doesn't know that all presidents, including Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Clinton, and Obama, were pre-informed and pre-identified and pre-informed in 1971 that they would be future U.S. presidents, so that all of the presidential campaigns and elections since then have been a form of political charade, because they know what the outcomes were, including the 2008 political campaign with Barack Obama. Now, what we're doing at ExoUniversity, and people can go and take our first course, which is our first class, which is on there, our first forum, which consists of 3 classes, called Time Travel with an emphasis on teleportation. And you'll find a class by me entitled Time Travel, Teleportation in the Future, and then you'll find 2 classes by Andy Basiago entitled A Brief History of Time Travel. And that will begin to get people into what really has been going on over the past 40 years, and what the difference is between the surface matrix that they experience, you know, in the press, in the media, in people's speech, in people's thoughts, and the actual reality which is occurring. It's absolutely groundbreaking, absolutely mind-expanding, and absolutely empowering. And you can get that all at www.exouniversity.org.
And I highly recommend that everybody out there listening just go check it out. I've already signed up for email updates, and I will be probably taking that first class to be sure. And since I know that a lot of the really juicy stuff we could talk about is actually on the website, and I want people to go there, when it comes to truth about Mars, jump rooms, etc., Barry Soetoro, what have you, I want to push people to the site because we do just have a couple minutes left, and I do have a couple of juicy questions I'd like to lay on you, if that's okay, Alfred.
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like you to answer yes, no, or no comment to the following question, if you would.
Sure.
Are you personally in contact with extraterrestrials?
Well, the answer is that I personally have had contact with interdimensional vehicles, and that's documented, and people can go to exopolitics.com, and you can see an analysis of what we call intention experiments, where we focus on and bring in interdimensional vehicles of advanced intelligent civilizations that create their own wormholes, come in with their vehicles, and are videotaped and photographed and communicate with us. So that is all documented. Go to exopolitics.com.
Okay. Next question. This comes from one of our listeners in the chat room who's curious what you feel is the most important thing for individuals to set their intent on today, and how this might relate to the Ascension theory.
Yeah, this is what I believe. Number one, absolute commitment to personal integrity and discernment. Only follow what you in your gut really can discern, and stay in your own integrity. No matter if a source is interdimensional, it doesn't mean that it's wiser. It may be deceptive. Number two, absolute commitment to the positive timeline and not the catastrophic timeline, because there are choices as to timelines, and collectively the human race can and is making a choice to go down a positive timeline, 2012 to 2025, for example, and not a catastrophic timeline. So discernment and positive timeline.
Okay. And that's kind of like the number one thing people ought to take away, I really think.
Yeah, totally.
Now, December 21st, what do you think is going to happen? I ask this of all my guests.
Yeah. The answer is exactly more or less what happened over the past. We're on June 6th now, and June 5th and 6th, we had the Venus transits. Mm-hmm. And those, some more sensitive people may feel the celestial movements more than others. But December 21st, 2012 will not be anything. It'll be more or less what occurred on October 28th, 2011, which is when the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe really kicked into unity consciousness, i.e., the bulk of humanity is just going to take it as another day. There'll be a lot of press stories, and the more that one is internally in touch with oneself, then the more you'll get out of it. But that's true of every day. It's not that it's a day like any other, but it's not an extraordinary day. In my humble opinion,
year.
Sorry?
But it's an extraordinary year.
It is an extraordinary year, however, not in the ordinary way. It is an extraordinary year, but not in the stereotypical way, because we're not ascending. See, ascension really means activation of our 12-strand multidimensionality. Therefore, ascension means reacquiring sovereignty over the third dimension. It doesn't mean leaving the third dimension. It's exactly opposite of the stereotypical memes that are out there about, quote, ascension, end of quote. So on December 21st, 2012, in my humble opinion, one should really feel more and more internal truth and sovereignty over the third dimension.
There you have it, folks. That's the take from Alfred Webre. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Certainly.
The website is ExoUniversity.org. Go check it out. You can also reach us at Facebook.com/ExtraordinaryYear. Like us, spread the word, kids. It's easy to help others when you know what's going on. You can follow me on Twitter at Tim Bravo. And so that's it for us on this 197th day before December 21st, 2012. Keep your ear to the ground and hold on tight, kids. It's going to be an extraordinary year.